A while ago, I visited a rare book fair, and I was amazed at the sheer number and range of old books present, reminding me of how books have changed over history. One of the things that was on sale was a couple of pages from the Gutenberg Bible, the first printed manuscript from Gutenberg himself, selling for about $200,000. Yeah, pretty steep for a few pages. This got me thinking about the books before Gutenberg. How did people attempt to transcribe words into different materials that could be read by other people? Well, it turns out there were a couple of examples in history. In this video, I'll go through some of them. In the lands of Mesopotamia, around the 4th millennium BC, in modern-day Iraq, stories were often transcribed into tablets. Some of these tablets were discovered centuries later, but were previously challenging to decipher, until a man named George Smith in the 1870s finally deciphered one of them. Translating the tablet, he discovered it to be about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which contains stories about a king called Gilgamesh. The basic overview of Gilgamesh is that he's this king who keeps getting into trouble for violating brides on their wedding day. The gods, seeing this, decide to make a man called Enkidu, who was responsible for stopping Gilgamesh. Enkidu originally lives with the gazelles, but after being seduced by Voltairus, which I think is a temple prostitute, learns to behave like humans. When Enkidu tries to stop Gilgamesh, they fight, but eventually became questmates. Questmates, obviously. Gilgamesh encounters Ishtara, the goddess of love, and when she professes her love for him, he rejects her. She then asks her father to send another god to kill Gilgamesh. That god is killed by Enkidu and Gilgamesh. Enkidu gets sentenced to death, and then Gilgamesh sets off to try to find the key to eternal life after Enkidu gets executed. This story was transcribed in cuneiform. Cuneiform was a writing system that existed in the past. The cuneiform script wasn't exactly a language, but was a writing system that existed in many languages. It uses somewhere between 600 and 1000 characters, which are used as syllables, which are then combined to represent words. I wonder what my channel name looks like in cuneiform script. Interesting. Texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh were written by pressing a straight reed into slightly moist clay. They were then fired in a kiln, and if they wanted to make the text permanent, or if they wanted to edit their text, they left the tablet slightly moist. Obviously, with the absence of automation in those days, people would have to painstakingly transcribe their texts one after the other if they wanted multiple copies. This text was created around 1450 BCE in Egypt. It is important to note that before wealthy individuals passed away, they would have a book of the dead created for them. So this likely belonged to Hunefer, who was a royal scribe. Hunefer, being a scribe, likely had to write a book of the dead for other people and may have contributed to his own book as well. Rather than being a single story, it is more like a collection of vignettes written in hieroglyphic script. More specifically, it contained a collection of spells that would help the dead transition into the afterlife. An example of a scene in the Book of the Dead was a depiction of the god Anubis weighing Hunefer's heart against a feather to determine if he had been good for the majority of his life. When reading it from left to right, it seems like a still animation that shows the movement of Hunefer to Anubis. The Etruscans were a group of people that originated from modern-day Turkey and later settled in Italy. In 1970, a soldier dug around the Struma River located in the southeastern Balkans and discovered the Etruscan Gold Book. The book likely reached Bulgaria through various trade channels. The book was about 6 pages bound together, made out of 23.42 karat gold with a weight of around 100 grams. The book was said to be made for a member of an aristocrat that was part of the Orpheus cult. It is estimated to have been created around 660 BC. There are illustrations of different symbols and figures, such as a horse, lyre, soldiers, and more. The Etruscans loved to use gold for jewelry and other artifacts, as the goldsmith techniques were likely used to create the book. Rather than being mined, gold was likely acquired via trade. Although we don't have much information about how the Etruscan golden book was made, from their jewelry, we know that when they wanted to make thicker jewels, they gathered multiple 0.1 mm gold sheets and combined them together. If we look at how much the book would be worth based on the gold, it approximates to about $12,000. It is also worth noting that the book found in Bulgaria is the only complete gold book found, with other single sheets found elsewhere. Around 868 CE, the Diamond Sutra was written by a Chinese scribe named Wang Ji. This book was rediscovered again in 1900 by a monk in the Silk Road. Despite being called the Diamond Sutra, the name is metaphorical, as the book was said to have teachings that cut through people's reality and perceptions like a diamond blade. While the book itself only contains about 6,000 words, it contains some of the teachings of Buddha. The book answers questions that were posed to Buddha by his disciples. The main points of the book was described as giving without attachment to self, liberating beings without notions of self and other, living without attachment, and cultivating without attainment. The book also tried to create a framework of knowledge that is inclusive and free from discrimination without the biases and ignorance that distorts perceptions. An interesting fact about this book was that it was one of the first books to explicitly state that it could be redistributed and reused under the public domain. The Diamond Sutra was a scroll that was nearly 5 meters tall. It was made up of 7 strips of yellow stained paper, printed from carved wooden blocks and pasted together. This type of printing was known as woodblock printing. People would first ink the desired characters that they wanted to print. They would then imprint these characters onto wood blocks coated with rice paste. They would then start the carving, leaving only the characters that could be imprinted. The paper was usually made from hemp or mulberry, and the wood came from date or pear trees. Woodblock printing was said to be used for religious texts and books regarding medicine and other spiritual beliefs. Woodblock printing remained the printing method of choice in China until the 19th century. The Madrid Codex is an interesting case because there is still some uncertainty about when the book was created, as many archaeologists have estimated that it was made around 1250 to 1450 AD. It was created by the Mayans, and it is one of the longest surviving Mayan codices. We could consider the Codex as an encyclopedia for the Mayans, keeping track of important information. The book contained information about horoscopes, which were used for ceremonies and divinatory rituals. It also contains astronomical information, such as the movements of stars and planets, an account of the 260-day calendar that the Mayans had, as well as containing information that was useful for specific ceremonies. It also contains images of humans doing everyday activities such as beekeeping, hunting, and weaving. The codex was made out of amate paper, which was a type of bark. To make the paper, the bark is stripped from the tree and then boiled and soaked for many hours. The fibers are then laid in a grid formation. They are then pounded together with a stone, creating a she, merging the different strands together. Based on the heavy emphasis on rituals, it is theorized that the codex was created by priests or other religious figures. When analyzing the hieroglyphics present in the text, it was deduced that 8 or 9 priests could have been working on the codex, with one priest being dedicated to a particular section. An interesting fact about the codex is that one of its pages depicts human sacrifice. Looking carefully at the image, we can see a person lying outstretched on a rock, their heart getting extracted. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.